Sometimes a person is trying everything for halal marriage, but every step feels blocked, every effort feels delayed, and nothing seems to move forward. And in that moment, the heart starts to wonder, is this ever going to happen for me? But not every closed door is a sign of rejection. Some doors are closed to redirect you. Some delays are written to protect your future. And some pauses are quietly shaping the right timing for you. Because when something is truly meant for you in halal, no obstacle can cancel it. And when it is not meant, no amount of effort can force it. So if you feel stuck, confused, or delayed right now, this message is for you, because what feels like delay today may be preparation for something far better tomorrow. The point where effort starts feeling useless, a person's life where effort no longer feels powerful. You are trying, you are making decisions, you are taking the right steps for something halal and sincere, especially in the matter of marriage. You are not chasing something wrong. You are not running after something forbidden. In fact, you are trying to protect yourself by keeping things clean and within limits. But still, nothing changes. You make dua and wait. You speak to people and wait. You try again and wait again. And slowly, without even realizing it, the feeling inside starts to shift. At first it was hope. Then it became patience. And now it starts turning into confusion. Because the mind begins to ask a very quiet question. If I am doing everything I am supposed to do, then why is nothing opening for me? And this is the point where effort starts to feel heavy. Not because the person has stopped trying, but because the results are no longer visible. You are putting energy into something that doesn't seem to respond. You are making sincere moves, but every direction feels like it ends in the same place: silence. What makes this even harder is that from the outside, no one really understands it. People may say, be patient or keep trying, but they don't see the repetition of disappointment behind your patience. They don't see how many times you thought something was finally working only to see it stop again. So the heart reaches a strange condition. It is still trying, but it is tiring. It is still hopeful, but it has learned not to celebrate too early. It is still making dua, but now there is a deeper layer of silence in those duas. A silence that carries confusion more than excitement. And this is where a person must be very careful, because this stage can either weaken the heart or refine it. If understood correctly, it is not the end of your effort. It is the beginning of a deeper lesson in trust, timing, and surrender. Because sometimes Allah allows effort to continue without immediate results, to punish the effort itself, but to shift where the heart is relying. From I am doing to Allah is deciding. And even when effort feels useless at that moment, it is never wasted in the sight of Allah. When every direction feels blocked, where the situation does not feel like a single problem anymore, it feels like every possible direction has been quietly closed. Not just one path, not just one option, but multiple routes that once looked possible suddenly no longer move forward. You try one way and it stops. You try another and it doesn't progress. You think maybe time will make things easier, but even time feels like it is not bringing change. And slowly, a strange realization enters the heart. It is not just delayed anymore. It feels like blockage from every side. This is where confusion becomes deeper than pain. Because pain is something you can understand. But repeated blockage creates a different kind of silence inside the heart. You are not fully in loss, but you are also not moving forward. You are standing in between, aware, patient, but unable to progress. In matters like halal marriage, this feeling becomes even heavier. Because it is not something you are trying to rush for desire alone. It is something you are trying to reach in the correct way, with respect, responsibility, and halal intention. So when even that feels blocked, the heart does not just question circumstances, it starts questioning timing itself. And in this phase, people often begin to look for hidden reasons. Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe I am missing something. Maybe I did something to stop it. The mind starts creating explanations because it cannot accept the silence of all directions closing at once. But not every blockage is a sign of failure. Sometimes Allah allows multiple doors to close so that the heart does not attach itself to any direction except the one He will open at the right time. It is not always visible wisdom. In fact, it often feels the opposite of wisdom when you are inside it. Because from your perspective, you are seeing closure. But from a wider reality, there may be protection happening that you cannot yet recognize. Certain paths may look good at first, but carry outcomes that would disturb your peace later. And sometimes those paths are stopped before they even begin. What makes this stage difficult is not just the blockage itself, but the repetition of it. One closed door could be accepted, two could still be understood. But when it becomes consistent from every side, the heart starts to feel surrounded by no. Even in this condition, something important is happening inside the person. Patience is not just being tested, perception is being reshaped. The person is slowly being moved away from relying on visible openings and being taught to trust what is not yet visible. Because when every direction feels blocked, it is not always a message that nothing is for you. Sometimes it is a message that what is for you is not in any of those directions yet. The heart that still tries, even after rejection, there is a very unique kind of strength that most people do not notice. It is not the strength of success and not the strength of clear progress. It is the strength of a heart that has already experienced disappointment, yet still chooses to try again. This becomes very real. A person may go through situations where something feels close, then suddenly falls apart. A conversation begins with hope, then ends in silence. A step forward is taken, then everything stops without warning. And each time this happens, it leaves behind a small mark inside the heart. But even after all of that, the heart does not completely shut down. I still look forward to it. It still makes dua. It still considers possibilities. This is the part that is rarely seen by others, the quiet persistence that continues even when expectation has been damaged. What makes this state so difficult is not only rejection itself, but the repeated experience of almost. Almost happening, almost working, almost becoming real, because almost carries hope and loss at the same time. It makes the heart believe something is near, and then teaches it that nearness is not always arrival. And yet, even in that condition, the heart still does not fully give up. It adjusts. It becomes more cautious, more silent, more reserved in expectation. But it does not completely stop believing that something meaningful can still happen. This is where inner conflict begins. A part of the person wants to protect itself from disappointment, while another part still wants to trust again. One side says, don't expect too much anymore. The other side quietly says, but maybe this time it will work. And between these two voices, the heart continues to move forward in a careful way. Not loudly, not confidently, but still moving. This is a form of resilience that cannot be easily explained. Because externally, it may look like nothing is happening. But internally, the person is repeatedly choosing to remain open, even after reasons to close themselves have already been experienced. This state carries a deeper meaning. It reflects a heart that has not completely turned away from hope. And hope, when directed correctly, is not weakness. It is a quiet form of endurance that continues even when outcomes are delayed. But at the same time, this is also a place where a person must learn balance. Because trying again and again should not turn into emotional exhaustion without awareness. There is a difference between persistence that is guided and persistence that is carried only by emotion. Sometimes Allah allows the heart to keep trying after rejection so that it learns the difference between attachment and reliance, between what the heart desires and what is actually written, between effort that is natural and expectation that becomes heavy. And even when rejection is experienced more than once, the fact that the heart still tries again is not meaningless. It shows that something inside has not completely closed. It shows that hope has not fully disappeared. And it shows that the person is still in motion, even if the path is not yet clear. The test hidden inside waiting is often misunderstood. Most people think waiting is simply the absence of progress, a pause between two events, or a temporary delay before something finally begins. But in reality, waiting is not an empty time at all. It is a space where something unseen is happening within the person. When someone is waiting for halal marriage, especially after repeated effort and disappointment, the waiting does not feel simple. It becomes heavier than expected. Days pass, then weeks, then months, and the external situation may appear unchanged. No clear development, no obvious answer, no visible sign of movement. But inside that silence, something deeper is taking place. This is where the test is hidden. The test is not only about whether something will happen or not. It is about who you become while nothing is happening. It is about how you carry yourself when outcomes are delayed, when explanations are unclear, and when certainty is replaced by patience. A person begins to notice their own thoughts more clearly. At first there is hope, then comes confusion, then comes questioning, and slowly waiting starts to shape the emotional state of the heart. The same situation that once felt light now begins to feel heavier, not because the situation changed, but because time stretched it out. And within that stretching, the real test begins to show itself. Will the heart remain steady, or will it become impatient? Will trust remain, or will it slowly weaken? Will a person continue to believe in wisdom, or start assuming randomness in what is happening? These are not small questions. They are silent movements inside the heart that define how a person carries their waiting. Waiting also affects identity. A person starts to feel behind compared to others. They see people around them moving forward, entering new stages of life, while their own situation feels paused. Even if they do not speak about it, they feel it internally. And this comparison slowly adds pressure to the waiting. But what is not often understood is that waiting is not only delaying something outside, it is also shaping something inside. It is building patience that cannot be created in comfort. It is strengthening emotional control that does not appear in easy times. And it is teaching the heart how to remain stable without immediate answers. This is why waiting is not passive in reality. It is active in a hidden way. It is not a gap in life. It is a process within life. And the most important part of this test is not the outcome itself, but the state of the heart during the process. Because two people can be in the same delay, but experience it completely differently. One may become frustrated and restless, while another may slowly develop deeper understanding and acceptance over time. This difference is not visible from the outside, but it is deeply significant. Sometimes what feels like delay is actually a removal of urgency from the heart. The need to control timing slowly decreases. The pressure to predict outcomes begins to fade. And a quieter form of trust begins to form, not based on what is seen, but on what is believed even without evidence. That is why waiting is not just about when will it happen. It is also about what is happening to me while I am waiting. The real transformation does not happen when the door opens, but while the person is still standing in front of a closed one, learning, adjusting, and slowly becoming someone who can handle what is coming next. What you think is rejection may not be rejection. There are moments in life when some things don't work out, and the immediate feeling inside the heart is very clear. It feels like rejection. A door closes, a conversation ends, a possibility disappears, and the natural interpretation is that it was not meant for you. The mind quickly labels it as no, and the heart begins to absorb it as a loss. But not every ending carries the meaning we assign to it in that moment. Sometimes what a person experiences as rejection is actually a form of protection that has not yet revealed itself. The situation looks like it has been taken away, but the understanding of why it was taken away does not come immediately. So the heart fills that gap with assumption, while reality remains hidden. This feeling becomes even more sensitive, because the intention is not wrong, the desire is not unlawful, the effort is sincere. So when something does not proceed, it naturally feels personal. It feels like something about you was not accepted, or something about the situation was not enough. But life does not always operate on visible reasoning. There are outcomes that are stopped before they reach completion, not because they were wrong in feeling, but because they were not aligned in timing, compatibility, or future direction. What is important to understand is that rejection is what the human mind sees in the moment. But what Allah allows is often based on knowledge that the human mind does not yet have access to. So the same situation can carry two different meanings, one seen immediately and one understood later. There are experiences where a person feels disappointment at first, but with time, clarity begins to appear. What once felt like loss slowly begins to make sense. The heart starts to recognize that something which did not continue was not meant to continue in that form at that time or in that way. And sometimes what feels like rejection is simply a redirection that has not been understood yet. A movement away from one path so that another path can eventually become possible. But in the moment of closure, only the closing is visible, not the direction that follows it. This is why immediate interpretation can be misleading. The heart reacts based on what it sees, while wisdom operates based on what is not yet visible. And the gap between the two creates emotional confusion. This can be especially heavy because emotions are involved. Attachment, hope, planning, and intention all get connected to a single possibility. So when that possibility ends, it does not feel like the end of an event. It feels like the end of something personal. But even then, what is important is not to define every closed door as rejection. Because not every closure is meant to communicate you are not enough or this was not for you. Sometimes it is simply a sign that the path was not aligned in the way it appeared at first. And there are situations where only later in life a person understands why something did not move forward. At that time, the earlier confusion is replaced by understanding. And what once felt like rejection is seen differently, not as denial, but as unseen protection or redirection. This is why immediate emotional conclusions are not always accurate, because they are formed in a moment of incomplete information. And when clarity eventually arrives, the same situation that once created sadness can become a reason for gratitude, not because the experience was easy, but because its meaning finally became clear. When Allah removes what you want but protects you from it, there are moments in life and when a person desires something deeply and everything inside them is moving toward it. The heart feels attached, the mind builds expectations, and the future begins to form around that one possibility. Especially in halal marriage, this feeling can become very strong because it is not just a wish, it feels like something meaningful, some right, something aligned with faith and intention. But then without warning, that possibility does not continue. It may stop through circumstances, timing, communication, or decisions from the other side. And in that moment, the natural reaction is confusion. Because from the person's perspective, it looked like something good was forming. It felt like it had potential. It felt close to becoming real. So when it ends, the heart does not just feel disappointment, it feels interruption. Not every interruption is a loss. Sometimes Allah removes something from a person's life, not because they are being deprived, but because they are being protected from something they cannot yet see. At the time of removal, the situation is only understood from one angle, what was desired. But there is another angle that is not visible yet, what was hidden inside that path. There are connections that appear right in the beginning, but carry difficulty later. There are paths that feel emotionally right, but become complicated in practice. And there are situations where the heart becomes attached before the full reality becomes clear. In such cases, the removal is not random, it is precise, even if it is not immediately understood. What makes this stage emotionally difficult is that the heart does not see the unseen part. It only sees what was taken away. It only sees the ending, not the outcome that was prevented. So it naturally feels lost, even when something greater is being preserved, something changes in understanding. A person may look back and realize that what did not continue saved them from emotional confusion, imbalance, or a path that would have been harder than expected. At that point, the same moment that once felt painful begins to carry a different meaning. This is why in Islamic reflection, removal is not always absence of good. It can be prevention from harm that has not yet arrived. And protection does not always feel like protection when it happens. Sometimes it feels like delay, sometimes like loss, and sometimes like unanswered desire. In matters of halal marriage, this becomes even more meaningful because the intention is pure and the desire is lawful. So when something is removed, it becomes harder to accept emotionally. But purity of intention does not guarantee ease of path. It guarantees that whatever happens within that path carries wisdom, even if it is not immediately clear. There are moments when Allah does not give what the heart asks for, because He is guarding the heart from something that would have created pain later. And at the same time, He is preparing something better that the person is not yet aware of. So what feels like removal is not always an ending. Sometimes it is a form of care that is beyond immediate understanding. A direction change that protects the person from walking into something that looks right from the outside, but is not suitable for their future. The heart often reaches a stage where it understands this silently, not through explanation, but through experience. That is when gratitude begins to replace confusion and clarity replaces emotional questioning. Not because the situation became easy, but because the meaning finally became clear. The opening that comes after long silence. There are moments in life where silence feels longer than expected. Not the silence of a single day or a short delay, but a stretched silence where nothing seems to change, nothing seems to move, and nothing seems to respond to the efforts made. A person keeps trying, keeps hoping, keeps waiting, yet the outward world remains still. In matters like halal marriage, this silence can feel even more sensitive because the intention is clear, the desire is sincere, and the effort is present, yet the outcome does not appear. Days pass, then weeks, then months, and the situation feels unchanged. It is in this extended silence that the heart begins to experience a different kind of pressure. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet and persistent. And then something subtle happens inside the person. They begin to adjust to the silence. At first they questioned it, then they struggled with it, then slowly they learn to live inside it. Not because they are satisfied, but because they have no other option except patience. And in this process, something internal begins to change without them fully realizing it. The heart becomes more reflective, the expectations become quieter, the emotional reactions become more controlled. And even though the desire is still present, the urgency begins to soften. This is not giving up. It is a transformation that happens when waiting extends beyond what was expected. But what most people do not realize is that silence is not absence of action. It only appears silent from the outside. In reality, there are processes unfolding that are not immediately visible. Timings are shifting, situations are aligning, circumstances are being adjusted in ways that the person cannot yet observe. And then when the time is right, not too early, not too late, something begins to open. It may not open loudly. It may not come in the way the person originally imagined, but it begins to move in a direction that was not moving before. A conversation resumes. A door that felt closed shows possibility again. A situation that felt paused begins to progress in ways that were not happening during the silence. What makes this moment powerful is not just the opening itself, but the contrast with what came before it. Because after long silence, even a small movement feels significant, even a small sign feels meaningful. The heart that once waited without clarity begins to recognize direction again. The person often realizes something important. The silence was not empty, it was shaping readiness. It was removing urgency from the heart. It was preparing an understanding that could not be formed in movement. And when the opening finally arrives, it carries a different feeling. Not confusion, not chaos, but a sense of clarity that was missing during the waiting period. The heart begins to see that what felt like nothing happening was actually a process of alignment happening quietly. This is why long silence is not always a sign of absence. Sometimes it is a sign that something is being prepared in a way that cannot yet be rushed. And when it finally unfolds, it often carries a sense of timing that feels more complete than anything that could have been forced earlier. Because what opens after long silence is not just a situation changing, it is also a heart that has been changed along the way. So if you are in a season where nothing seems to be opening for you, and every step toward halal marriage feels blocked, don't let that make you lose hope. Because what is written for you will never miss you, and what misses you was never meant to stay. Sometimes Allah delays what you want until you become the person who is truly ready for it. Not just ready to receive it, but ready to protect it, value it, and live it in the right way. Asking only, why is it not happening? Start trusting that there is wisdom in the timing you cannot yet see. Stay patient, stay clean in intention, stay firm on halal. And remember, what is coming to you in Allah's timing will always be more peaceful than what you tried to force in your own timing.